Okay, it is 11:30, so we'll get started just to keep on time. Thank you guys for joining. I'm sure there will be a couple more people who pop on, but I wanted to do a quick introduction and then I'll let Meredith take it over. But Meredith is a student at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. She is in her master's program and she is in the internship program to become a registered dietitian. So she is well on her way to learning all the information she needs in order to practice as a dietitian, which is really exciting. But today she's going to tell us a little bit more about eating well on a budget. I think this will be a great presentation. And if you guys have any questions during the presentation, you can add them to the chat box and I'll ask Meredith them towards the end of her presentation. You also have the opportunity to ask those questions to her directly at the end if you'd like. And you've probably already seen, but this is recorded. You guys will have access to it afterwards. So if you need to hop off early for whatever reason, or if you're thinking you need to take notes, you will have access to it. So I will let Meredith take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Meredith, and I have been interning with Peyton, the wellness coordinator, for the past month. We're going to talk about a topic that impacts all of us, how to eat well without overspending. This is extremely relevant as right now food prices are high and rising, but with some smart strategies, we can stretch our dollar and still get balanced meals. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover smart planning before you even step into the store, how different food forms compare. So those forms being fresh, frozen, canned, bulk, name, and store brands, how drinks affect your budget and health, and finally, how coupons and apps can save you some money. The first place to save money isn't at the checkout line. It's before you even go shopping. Taking inventory of what you have, planning your meals for the week, and writing a list can really cut costs down. Just to start, and kind of curious, how many people usually shop with a grocery list? Um, so just let me know if a couple of you do. Yeah, I see some hand raises. And then let's dive into how and why we can maximize these kinds of things. All right, so starting with what we already have, inventorying these items can kind of help with food waste and just planning for the week. So a couple of examples, if you already have some pasta and some canned tomatoes, you only need to pick up some meatballs to make a full meal. Or if you have rice and frozen veggies, just add some eggs and you've got fried rice. Building meals from what's already available saves both money and food waste until, of course, you have to restock all of the essentials like that. The next way is meal planning, and meal planning doesn't have to be complicated. There's a couple different ways to do it. And so the ones that I've highlighted are filling out a weekly meal template or a simple shopping list broken down by food groups. I've actually created a few sheets similar to these formats that will be shared with you in a follow-up email. But kind of describing them, the weekly template I really enjoy as a way to just kind of see what the plans are for the week and how it'll look. So, for example, if you're planning to have sandwiches for lunch every day, you know you'll need to get those items. If you know you're going to be going out on Friday night or something, you know you won't have to plan a meal for that night. So this can just kind of give you an idea of how much and what certain items you want to have. Similarly, with kind of the inventory, I've made these two grocery lists and it kind of splits up what you already have, again, by food group, just so you know, okay, I have these things. What can I make with them and what do I need to make with them? And then the same format with an actual grocery list of needs, broken down by food group, just because that is how I work as a future dietitian. And I think that's kind of helpful when you're in the store, since all of those items might be kind of in the same areas. If you guys have any other, like we were talking about, you that make grocery lists, if you have any other methods that really work for you, I would love to hear those in the chat as well. So we just quickly went over a couple fun planning methods to before the store, and this has three big benefits. First of all, it cuts down on impulse buys in the store. It helps reduce food waste by making sure you use what you already have, and it makes busy weeknights less stressful because you already know what's for dinner. Getting into some more specific items, we're going to talk about what you'll find in the aisles. So that will be fresh versus frozen versus canned, name versus store brand, and when buying in bulk makes sense. So fresh, frozen, and canned, I think is a pretty big topic and kind of a lot of misconceptions sometimes. So let's start with a quick, simple example of corn. You can buy it fresh, frozen, or canned. Which one do you think is most nutritious? Type a number in the chat really quick. Okay, so a lot of people are saying one, which is the fresh version. And that's correct. But if you guess two or three, you're also correct. It's actually a trick question. They're nearly all the same. Which one you choose really just depends on the cost, convenience, and like flavor preference yourself. So let's dig into what the research says. So studies comparing fresh, frozen, and canned foods found that vegetables generally hold their nutrition pretty well, no matter the form. Canned veggies tend to be the cheapest, about 20% less than fresh and 50% less than frozen. For fruits, it does lose more nutrients, such as antioxidants. Um, you want to watch out for syrup on these, even if it says light or extra light, because syrup is just another term for sugar, which is used to preserve the texture and flavor of fruits, but it is what, again, of course, adds that sugar, and that processing does reduce the other good nutrients. Uh, Tomatoes, which I don't know if you think they're a fruit or a vegetable, but by definition, they're fruit. And so they actually are the only fruit that actually is more nutritious in canned form. So that is because the heat processing of canning tomatoes breaks down the tough cell walls of this fruit, and that releases pigments that makes it easier for the body to absorb those types of vitamins. Finally, with meats, there are canned and frozen options as well, which is very convenient and helpful. But they may have some added sodium for preservation. So you may not even notice, but yeah, like on this frozen bag of chicken, it does end up having up to 15% of salt and broth and other flavors that add sodium. With that discussion on sodium, I do just want to also circle back to the vegetables. They are, again, pretty nutritious, nutritionally equal to their fresh counterparts, but you still want to keep a close eye on the labels, making sure there's no salt added and things like that, because sometimes they are. Another big money saver is going with store brands. In a blind taste test, most people can't even tell the difference. 3 out of 4 times, the store brand tastes just as good or better. And on average, they cost 20 to 30% less than name brands. So, for example, peanut butter has similar ingredients, although the store brand does have a few extra preservatives, but it is a whole dollar cheaper as well. I was wondering if you guys have any items that you always buy in store brand. If you do, comment. For example, I personally prefer the Hy-Vee brand of cottage cheese over like even Highland and name brand like that. So who knows? Maybe that's another benefit as well. Um, you'll find the biggest savings on staples like cereal, flour, spices, dairy, canned goods, and snacks. And this research I found actually had a table of the stores that have the biggest savings compared to national brands. So Costco, Aldi, Walmart, you can save almost 50%. And then higher end stores like Whole Foods do have store brand options, but they aren't as much cheaper either. Finally, buying in bulk can be another great strategy, but it takes a little bit of math power. So if you look at the unit price instead of the total price on the shelf, the unit price tells you how much you're paying per ounce, per pound, or per serving. So it's the best way to compare sizes. And you can usually find it on the small print under a tag on the shelf. So you see in the top to right corner, I think that's just like a regular Walmart price tag. So there's the price. It does say that it's 12 ounces for Cheerios, but then that red section specifically does say 24.9 cents per ounce. Um, a couple other examples I included with soup, a big can of 19 ounces costs 269 compared to which comes out to be about 14 cents per ounce. A smaller can, 10 and a half ounces, costs $1.99, but that comes out to be about 19 cents per ounce. So even though the smaller can looks cheaper at first glance, you're actually paying more per ounce. Um, Also, I wanted to mention with the soup, like that 10.5 can is obviously concentrated, whereas a 19 ounce is just pour, heat, and eat. So that's another thing you can consider in terms of convenience as well as cost. Um, Another example, because it's a little bit more complicated with produce, is a bag of peppers priced by the pound often ends up being cheaper per pepper. So if you're a single bell pepper might be 99 cents, which sounds reasonable, but when you weigh it, it's not going to be a whole pound. It may be like a third of a pound, which would make the cost per pound over $3. Whereas a bag of peppers that are priced by the pound may end up being cheaper per pepper. Again, it just depends on the bag and how big the peppers are and the weight, of course. So just another way to keep those things in mind. A final consideration when buying in bulk is that it really only actually saves you money if you are going to use the food before it spoils. So it's best for things that are shelf stable, like rice, beans, oats, canned goods, and things you'll go through for sure. And now we're going to talk about two areas people often overspend without realizing: drinks and skipping out on coupons. Let's look at drinks first. So, drinks can make or break your budget and nutrition. They add up in both sugar and costs, and they also often don't keep you full. Let's look at a few examples. So, as everyone already knows, regular soda is loaded with sugar. It's actually about 10 teaspoons per can. And if you're drinking that daily, that can be a huge calorie load over time. With diet, of course, that cuts the calories out, but it also doesn't provide any other nutrition either. Um, Prebiotic sodas are trendy and have gut health benefits, but especially because they're being sold by can, they can kind of get you with it costing about triple the amount of a regular soda. So if you're watching your budget, this is one area that marketing can really get you. Electrolyte drinks like Gatorade are great and have their place when you're working hard or sweating a lot. But for most people, day to day, they're really pretty sugary and just kind of add to that as well. Powder packets like Liquid IV are also super convenient and they are lower in sugar, but they are also pricey. So for most situations, when you're not working hard, like I mentioned, plain water is usually just fine in terms of getting those electrolytes. Finally, energy drinks. These are actually some of the most expensive ways to get caffeine, interestingly. So a can of Red Bull costs almost $2, while something like Celsius can pack in twice the caffeine for a similar price. Coffee is also, I'd consider kind of an energy drink in a way, and it can kind of be a good comparison exercise too. A coffee shop latte might be $5 to $7, but a cup brewed at home might be less than $1. Plus, coffee does include natural caffeine and antioxidants. So the home brewed coffee is definitely the way to go. I'm a big coffee shop girl, so no judgment, but definitely just something that can absolutely add up pretty quickly. So I just ran through a bunch of different types of drinks really fast. This table puts it together. So you can see how much sugar, caffeine, and cost each of those drinks are. So for example, one can of soda is almost 50. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say compared to the daily values of the caffeine and sugar, I also noted because, yeah, a can of soda contains 40 milligrams of sugar, which is pretty close to the 50 milligrams suggested per day. So if you if you drink that, it's kind of you're already pretty much there. Another big stat that is hard to hear is that one can of soda daily is almost 50 pounds of sugar and $800 a year when added together. Um, Drinks are also an area, again, as someone even just mentioned in the chat, which is great, that it is important to consider buying bulk or even store brand. Like, they have the store brand of Coke, and I'm sure, again, those would have very similar ingredients to the name brand. So this time you don't have to share if you don't want to, but just kind of as a reflection in this area, think about your go-to drink. And like I said, mine is like a Dunkin' iced coffee. I don't get it every day, but maybe 2 to 3 times a week. So how much do you think that would add up to be? How much do you spend on your go-to drink per month? Just something to think about. Finally, let's talk coupons. Another situation where a few minutes of planning before the store can save you quite a bit. There's some digital apps now we love, like Ibotta, coupons.com, and store specific ones like Target Circle or Walmart that make it super easy. And they offer a variety of options for saving, such as cashback, coupons, or rewards points. The trick is stacking coupons on top of sales in the store for maximum saving. And even saving a couple dollars per trip adds up across the year. So that's all I have. Eating well on a budget is absolutely doable with some smart planning, knowing where to save in the store, and being mindful of hidden costs like drinks. Thanks so much for your attention and participation, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Meredith. I'll look and see if anything comes through on the chat. But what are your thoughts on like grocery pickup? So like grocery store pickup, do you think that helps? Do you think that's not helpful? What's your opinion there?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think that it's a great resource, and depending on the circumstance, it is definitely helpful. Obviously, the fees for delivery will also be something that might be a hidden cost that kind of add up. But if you're in a situation where that is easier than going to the store and maybe even yeah, getting to the store with kids or with the transportation you have available is difficult. Like that can save more doing that than, of course, correlating all of those things.
Yeah, I noticed that we get the newspaper, right? And you get all the coupons and the deals, but I like never look at those. I always go on to the online, like we shop at Hy-Vee sometimes and we'll do pickups and I'll look at what deals are going on and sometimes frame my meals around that. So I think that can be helpful too. It looks like a couple other people like swear by grocery pickups.
That's a great idea. Yes.
We have another question. Do you have any ideas on recipes for single living people? Simple crock pot recipes where they're not so much waste.
Yes, that's a great question. And I think it's a big barrier just cooking for one because, yeah, you don't want to do all that. You don't want to do all the dishes, all the prep, and then just have one meal. Yeah, again, I personally do kind of like to prep just so that they're with leftovers but if you're not the type that that like if you're the type that gets bored of foods, single meals are definitely doable. Again, with those like frozen chickens or something like that, that's easy where you can just kind of take out one at a time. Same with like rice, if you just put one serving of rice in a cooker or something like that. um, Crock pot recipe is a great idea. Again, just like what I was kind of listing, throwing one to two pieces of your meat preference, and then potatoes and veggies will definitely either, yeah, be super easy for you when you get home, or like have some stuff prepped for you for a couple days.
But I'll also add to something that I've seen a couple people do that might be helpful for this is, and I have feelings about using like ChatGPT for nutrition stuff, but I have seen people list out like what they have in their house, and then they will ask ChatGPT to create a recipe that they can make with the items that they have in their house, or if they just are going to go to the store and pick up a couple more items, and it can be helpful in giving some of those like little meal ideas in case you're stumped and you just don't know what to do. And a lot of them are like, okay, throw this in a crock pot. This can be a good idea. So that can be just a good, fun, different idea to try out for those of you who struggle to come up with recipes um, with the things that you already have in your house. And then there was another question, what about people living with others where it goes day by day for meals? It can be hard to meal prep for meals when you aren't sure if others will be around.
Yeah, totally. That is a tough one. Yeah, I would just say that I mean, again, I'm a big leftover person, so I would plan to make the most that you need, and then if they don't come, that's their loss, and you can have it tomorrow or something. But if you don't want to waste, of course, too, I would say that something like just doing easy build your own meals, like if you do like sandwiches or mini pizzas where it's like one serving but like you can all do the same kind of thing, maybe that would be helpful as well.
Great. Any additional questions for Meredith? Okay. I'm not seeing any specific come through. It was a good conversation. Thank you, everybody,
Great.
for being so interactive. Thank you,
Yes.
Meredith. Great job. As a reminder, this is recorded. I will send out the link here later this afternoon so that you guys all have access to it. Um, and I'll send out the attachments that Meredith was talking about, like the grocery lists and things like that as well. So, um, yeah, thank you much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.